Kim, it is so awesome to have you here. Thank you for being on the new Mid.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Well, you know what? You are a successful entrepreneur, and we're talking about how to become your own boss because I know a lot of us in midlife that's very attractive and we love to be our own boss. But before we get into that, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Kim. I'm the owner and publisher of Sass Magazine, which is a women's lifestyle and professional magazine, and also the owner of Sass Studios, which is a creative branding and design agency. We work with clients all over the country, big, small, but our passion really is to work with women entrepreneurs and women-oriented businesses. Let's see. I am married my high school sweetheart, and we're still together. It's been a really long time. Um, we have, um, yeah, he's actually out fishing right now. He loves going fishing in my spare time. I love traveling when we are allowed to travel, gardening, and reading.
Oh, that's
That was a
awesome.
lot.
No, that's great. That's
Sorry.
awesome. No, so you have been an entrepreneur for about how long now?
I started my graphic design business in 2008. So it's been 12, almost 13 years.
That's awesome. So what
Mhm.
made you decide to start your own business, to become an entrepreneur?
So I always had an entrepreneurial spirit. And actually, if I'm being honest, the first business I started was in my early 20s. It was a nonprofit dance company. So that was kind of my first like approach with really running an organization. Um, and yeah, I just always kind of had that self motivation, that entrepreneurial spirit, that kind of wanting to figure out how to do things my own way, wanting to speak to people my own way. So it was always kind of a dream of mine. When I graduated college, I got a job right away in a local design firm, and I worked with them for several years. And then I got to a point where there really wasn't anywhere else for me to grow in the company, and I decided it was time for me to branch out on my own. I started my graphic design business basically with my laptop and no clients, sitting on my couch with my dog, like watching me. And I just kind of went for it. And from there, I've been able to build it up into a you know, full service creative studio. And then 5 years ago, we started Sass Magazine as well.
Oh, that's great. What made you decide to start a magazine?
So it actually was always kind of a dream of mine to have a magazine or like a catalog or something. My sister and I, when we were growing up, we would make like kind of design or make like catalogs and as like for play and stuff. So that was always fun. And with my graphic design firm, we very organically got into working with a lot of magazines where we would do the layout and design for several trade publications that were national trade publications, some more local and regional magazines. And I loved doing the layout for it and the problem solving. But I kind of wanted more. And so the idea for SAS really came from my husband and I took a road trip to South Florida. It was like an 18-hour trip one way. So it's a lot of time to spend in the car. Um, and from that trip, whether it was, so much time in the car with really nothing to do, or whether it was, sitting on the beach and drinking several like mojitos, I'm not sure. The idea for the magazine kind of came about because I wanted to combine our expertise of an experience of doing the layout and design for magazines and also our expertise in working with women entrepreneurs. And I saw that there really wasn't a resource in the Frederick community in our area for women entrepreneurs specifically that gave them a voice, that shared their stories. So that's kind of how the idea for SAS kind of came about, sort of combining things that I was already doing and seeing that void that was really needed in our community.
That's great. You were filling the gap. which is a big thing
Yep.
when you're starting a business. So speaking of which, it's so interesting because just statistically, that's easy for me to say. About 60% of the entrepreneurs are aged 40 to 60. So most of us midlifers actually start our own businesses. The other statistics that's kind of crazy is about 20% fail in the first 2 years. um, what do you think makes a successful business?
So I I used to think that anybody could start their own business. Um, I've come to realize that that's actually not true. Having your own business is hard. It's a lot of work. It's hard work. It's having to figure things out on your own. Um, I think I read something the other day. It said something like, "I never knew that being an entrepreneur meant Googling like everything that I ever wanted to know." Because there's no backup, there's no higher up, there's not really anybody to like make that path for you. You're making your own path. So it is hard work. So I do think, unfortunately, that sometimes people start businesses either before they're really ready for that amount of work, or they just aren't aware of, how much hard work it's going to be. Especially, in today's society, you look on Instagram and you see people who look like they have a perfect lives and they're making a business out of traveling or blogging or doing this, and they make it look so easy. Well, what they don't show you is that it took them 10 years or so to get to that point. So it's not easy. So unfortunately, I think that that's why a large percentage of businesses fail in the beginning.
So if
Did that answer your
someone's
question?
Yeah, no, it does. So I was just thinking, so if someone's thinking about starting one, they're really kind of contemplating it right now and they're like, "Okay, I want to listen to this episode because I want to know what it takes." What do you think someone should know before they start? Like, what do you wish you would have known before you started? What are the tools that you would suggest they have before they actually leave their job or pull the trigger? And yeah, what would you say that is?
So for me, in my path, I feel like, not necessarily in order to be a successful business owner, but really to be an entrepreneur, um, and love what you do day in and day out so that you continue to do the hard work. It does have to be something that you are passionate about. So you have to kind of ask yourself your why. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you starting this particular business? Is it because, for me, when I started my own business, I wanted to do my own designs and get my own clients, but I wanted to help other businesses build themselves up with their branding. When I started Sass, I wanted to, help women in our area empower themselves and connect. So those are my whys. So I think that is one of the most important things, is to really figure out your why and why you want to start whatever particular business that you really want to start, and have that passion for your why. Um, I forgot the other
That
part of your
kind of
conversation,
that
your
helps when
question.
you're No, that's okay. No, because that kind of helps when you're not wanting to get out of bed or you're not wanting
Yeah.
to have to do the hard stuff, is to know what your why is. Now, did you have a
Yep.
certain amount of money set aside, or, the legal stuff, the accounting, you know, did you have all of that set up, or did you just sort of jump into it and figure it out as you went?
So I knew I had set myself a goal. I knew, I believe it was January of 2007. I told myself and my husband, I said, you know what, I wanted, by the end of the year, I'm going to start my own business. So it was something that was planned. So within that year, we saved up, because we knew that with me starting a business, there wasn't going to be, an immediate income for several months. So we did save up so that we had a little bit of a cushion, so that I felt very comfortable starting my own business, and knowing that I didn't need, a certain amount, like right away at the start, that I could build up that clientele and build it up the way that I really wanted to. So that is something that I do suggest for anybody who is thinking about starting their own business, is really plan for it if you can, if you have the opportunity. Obviously, with things that are going on right now, a lot of people didn't have that opportunity. But if you are able to kind of plan your finances or budget, that just kind of gives you a little bit of cushion, that gives your a peace of mind, essentially, so that you can really focus on building the business that you want, instead of always having that scarcity mindset of I need to have a certain amount of revenue right away.
Right. Did you also go to people who had a design company? Did you ask for other people's advice, or sort of build your company similar to someone else that you admire, or did you just Google it?
um, yes, to all of your questions, a little bit of everything. So I took, things that I had experienced from my previous job, from my internships, from even other unrelated jobs. I took the things that I valued, that worked for me, that worked for the way that I wanted to do business, and then I also brought in my own self to it, and kind of created a system in a way that made sense for me to do business. Whether it's the best way to run a, branding design firm or magazine, probably not. I'm figuring it out every single day as I go along. I don't, I don't know the right answers. But I think that that's part of being an entrepreneur, and part of the fun of it is there is no right path. You get to make your own path.
Is that part of the entrepreneur spirit that you were talking about?
I believe so. Is I think at the heart, entrepreneurs are problem solvers. So if we have a way that we go about doing something, but we think that it could be better, then we'll figure out a better way to go about doing it. If we see something that, you know, a problem that needs to be solved, we figure out a way to solve it. And that might be even creating a brand new business model around it. But at the heart, entrepreneurs are problem solvers.
Well, that's so interesting, because I was going to ask you how you dealt with obstacles, because obstacles are going to come up. And sometimes it's really hard, especially if you're the only person doing the business. So, how do you keep going? How did you keep going? How did you overcome those obstacles?
Yes, there are obstacles all the time. There are obstacles daily. And I think you're laughing because you know it's true.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Ones you can see coming and ones you have no idea.
Yep. And I think one thing that entrepreneurs have are similar is, again, they're problem solvers. We're also able to quickly prioritize what actually has to be done versus what can be weeded out if an obstacle were to come to us. Like, what basically getting down very quickly to the core of what that problem or that obstacle is, and not just coming out with one solution, but coming out with one solution and then like 4 plan Bs. So I think that that's how we deal with obstacles. Is
So,
I know for myself,
yeah.
my brain is like, and most other business owners and entrepreneurs I talk with, there's no off switch, right? So there's always, your brain's always kind of thinking about things, or being inspired by things. And that doesn't mean that all entrepreneurs are complete workaholics. It just means that we find inspiration everywhere. And there's always like that need to learn, or that need to better. So when an obstacle does come along, that's that kind of way that our brain works. It's already sort of trained to figure it out very quickly and get down to it
Oh, I
very
love
quickly.
that. I love that. So interesting. There has to be times when you were like, okay, I'm just going to throw in the towel. This is just too much now. How did you work through those periods of time?
Oh yeah, like that was like yesterday. especially this year. That's like every other day.
Oh, right. Oh my gosh. Well, we are going to talk about how you pivoted with COVID because oh
Yeah,
my gosh, everyone's had to do that. But yeah.
yeah. So yeah, there's definitely been some downsides to the business, whether that was downsides of losing certain staff members or um, the revenue, losing clients, whether that was personal things, having to deal with something in my personal life while still maintaining a business and kind of putting on I don't want to say a happy face, but putting on a professional place at business. So yeah, there's a lot of times where it would be a lot easier, to not do it and to get a 9 to 5. Or a 5 to 9, whatever type of type of job. But I think for me, it always comes down to like my why I'm doing this. And also I know after being in business for almost 13 years, it's just part of it, to be honest. Like being an entrepreneur is just like ups and downs, and you can't really, we just actually posted something on our Instagram just the other day. You really can't appreciate the highs unless you also experience those lows. So it's just part of it. I mean, you know,
Yes, I couldn't agree more because there are a lot of highs and lows, and it is an obstacle. And it's so interesting because you do kind of come to a point where you're like, no, this is what it is. Like I can't, you almost can't go back,
yep,
Although it is very romantic to think, oh, the pressure of bringing in new clients and all of that. It'd be just so nice to show up at a desk and do my
yep.
work and then turn the computer off and go home.
It, it, it would be. I mean, yeah, it would be. That really would be. No. Um,
Yeah, but
but
you
with
know what? How
from
powerful is that though to be building your own business? You are building something for yourself.
Yeah, and I will say for me, I mean, that's just not in me, my spirit. Like the highs for me are hearing people who say, "Hey, I read this article about Sass Magazine, and it inspired me to do XYZ," or coming to one of your events and I met somebody there and now we're best friends, or now we're business partners. Like all of these stories that come out of something like an idea that I created is amazing, to be honest. And it's hearing those things, or even just hearing somebody say, I loved this issue, or, thank you. Like, you know, what else can I ask for? Like,
That makes it all
that's,
worthwhile.
it does, it makes it worthwhile.
So we kind of joking, laughing about this year, and I'm sure you've had to pivot. You kind of touched on it a little bit. You went from a design studio to starting a magazine. So how have you pivoted, and how has COVID affected your business?
So yeah, I mean, just like most businesses, it's definitely been a weird year. We So for the client side of things, for the design studio side of things, that's stayed fairly the same. We've kind of really zeroed in on our client base. So that side of the business has been keeping going strong. Knock on wood. The magazine got hit, to be frank, pretty hard this year. We had a really big year of events lined up. Obviously, none of those happened. Our magazine, our print issue, is distributed all around the region as a free publication. A lot of which are in high traffic areas, medical offices, waiting rooms, hotels, restaurants, and those places were shut down or are operating differently now. We also had to think about the safety of our distribution team is actually my parents, my retired parents. So yeah, when COVID first hit, and in the beginning of March, when things started to get, people were kind of like, wait a minute, what is this? What is this thing? We had just started distributing our spring issue, which ironically was the home issue, all about like doing things at home, working from home, everything like that.
It's like you knew.
But when I know. So when things kind of started to get like a little weird, I very quickly, called my parents back and said, I don't want you distributing yet. Let's wait and see, like, like for your safety, for the safety of like people, places where we're distributing to, let's just put a halt on it. Meanwhile, thinking it would be maybe 3-4 weeks. Obviously that's not how it panned out. So our print side of things definitely was affected a lot. We just printed our fall issue, which is the first time we've been able to print an issue since March.
It's a great issue, by the way.
Thank you. Yes, everybody should read it and read about Michelle's story as well. Boss issue. So what we had to do, because things really did look different, and also the way that we went about creating the magazine, like we didn't want to have photo shoots where we had several people in one interior location. Our meetings, even our office space, we moved out of our office space because we were starting to work remotely. So like pretty much how we did almost everything really changed, like kind of overnight. So the way that we pivoted is we really focused on our digital side of things, which we had been ramping up before COVID hit anyway. And this kind of gave us the push to ramp up even more. So we've now online, sassmagazine.com has daily content, daily articles being put out that are similar to the articles that are in our print issue, but they're all different. So you can get, new articles about wellness, business, lifestyle, decorating, recipes, like just anything. So we really just kind of focused on the digital side of things this year. And it's been great because that was part of our long-term business plan anyway. We just kind of did it a little bit out of order than what we had anticipated.
It got accelerated.
Yep.
No, that's awesome. So what would you say to somebody who really thinks that they have the entrepreneur spirit, but is just, they have an idea, but they're not sure if the idea is gonna work? What would you say to them?
So what I always tell people is, when you're ready, when it's the first thing you think about in the morning, and it's the last thing you think about before you go to bed. And it's always something in the back of your mind that you're constantly thinking of. If that's where you're at, where it's really just always there, you're always thinking about it, then you're probably ready. It's probably time for you to go ahead and, plan to get started. And I will say, like, it is, if you're able to, plan some financials to do things like get your website set up, like all of that kind of stuff. That's good as well. But I think the core of it is, if it's really just the thing that you are constantly focusing on, then you're ready.
There's a desire. What are the things that they would need to focus on? You mentioned a website. What would you say, like top 5 things that they would need to get in line? And where could they go to figure this out?
So for me, and the type of business that I run, is a service-based business. So the things that you need for a service-based business might be different than something that you need for a product-based business or a restaurant. But I think some of the core things that you really need to get in place are really think about who are your clients going to be, who's your audience, where are they, what are you able to serve them with, what makes you different, what are you giving them. So really figure that out first, like who are your people. I think that having some kind of digital presence, a website, even if it's just a single page, is definitely necessary, especially right now. So that's also something that I would say, to have right away. We're also a branding company, so having kind of your brand sort of identity, like what is, everybody thinks about having a logo, which is very important, but it's not, it's so much more than having a logo. It's kind of what is your brand culture? What is this business? Like, if I were to go visit your store or your website, like, how does that make me feel? So really think about kind of who you are as a business, and again, what makes you different. I think the things that you kind of, depending on your business, you might need to talk to a lawyer just to make sure that you have your business set up in the correct way. A lot of times people start out as solopreneurs, which is, a great way to start your business small and then just build from there. Having some kind of system for invoicing, accounting, bookkeeping, and probably looking into bringing on a CPA, at least for your taxes, to help you with taxes, is also like super important, and to get into the habit of that like right away. So I think that those are some of the core things that you need to really think about and kind of at least have set up, or a plan for how those are going to run before you start.
That's great. And I had one time heard too that you should also have an org chart. Not that you're necessarily going to have it right away, because most of us are probably going to be, we're solopreneurs like you were mentioning, but to actually have sort of a vision of where you would want your company to go. So, have you ever thought about, did you think about that, or were you like, "Oh, I just kind of flew by the seat of my pants and then I just grew as I grew?" And when did you know to start hiring?
So, in all honesty, when I started, I did not do an org chart because I really started out just thinking I would be a freelancer and I would be a solopreneur. I had never really had, the desire to like run a large business. That was just my path. I had thought maybe 2 to 3 people at most if I got to that point. And we've continued with that. Like, our staff has fluctuated throughout the years, but we've never had more than 5 or 6 people like at one time. Um, I I know this is probably really bad, maybe bad business advice, and it's probably not what a business coach would say, but I don't necessarily think that that's has to be done right at the beginning. I think a lot of times that sort of work, um, especially if you're starting out as a solopreneur, starts to take shape as you're in it and you really figure out what your process is, and then taking a look at where can you expand, and what are the things that other people could do to help you build your business up. So I'm in a kind of a mastermind group, and one of the ladies is a leadership coach, and she's also from England, and I just love like listening to her voice because she speaks so cool. But the one thing she said is, as a business owner or CEO, is you should only be doing what only you can do. So as your business grows, you really have to think about that. Like, what are the things that only I can do? And, some of the things like social media or invoicing, bookkeeping, those are not necessarily things that like other people can do that. The things that only I can do is my artistic vision, my visioning for the business, my strategy for the business, managing like all of the people and everything. Those are the things that only I can do. So that's a lesson that I'm in the process of learning too, by the way.
That's great. And when did
So
you
getting back to
start when did you start hiring people?
so I hired people. I think I had been freelancing maybe for about 4 years, and I had brought on maybe a contractor here or there for when things got really busy. But I was starting to get a workload that it was just getting to be too much for one person to do. And so my first hire was actually an intern. I brought on an intern first to really kind of see if that was the path that I wanted to go in, hiring somebody, and also to kind of see what my like management style was, before I went like all in with like hiring somebody like full time. So that was my path. That worked for me. I ended up, my intern, she ended up being my first employee and worked with me for about 8 years. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
That sounds great. Well, I can't believe we are coming to the end of our interview. It went by so quick. And I always ask my guests two questions. The first question is, what advice would you give your younger self?
So in regards to entrepreneurship and owning your own business, my one thing that I would always tell my younger self, and what I would tell anybody who's looking to start their own business, is you can't do it by yourself. So finding, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to hire people. It can mean finding your tribe, finding, those people who are going to support you and in whatever you do. So that can be several different buckets. You might have your family and friends who support you in one way. For me, it's been things like I have a group of women who are also creative entrepreneurs, and we've been meeting for lunch for, I think it's going on like 7 or 8 years now. And I just, as a business owner, like by myself and not in a partnership, I wanted to talk to other business owners and kind of get their approach on things, get their opinion on things. And that, having that kind of mentality, other people that you can rely on, that are there to support you, to build you up, who help you grow, that's definitely needed. Because like I said, it's hard, and sometimes it can feel isolating when you're your own boss, especially when you're responsible for other people. So having those people who totally get it and who get you and who are cheering you on just as much as you're cheering them on, yeah, look for that as well.
That's awesome. And my final question is, if somebody is on the fence and they just need that extra little push to get started, what advice would you give them to get started?
Um, well, the first one would be, if you know and you're thinking about it all the time, last thing you think about before you go to bed, and first thing you're thinking about when you wake up in the morning, then you know that you're ready. To push, to kind of, if you're on the fence, and just to push you, that little push that you need is, you know who you are, what your why is, and you know that you probably have something to offer the world, and the world needs to see it. So don't be afraid to go for it. And when I was starting my own business, I was so worried about, like, is it gonna work? Is it gonna fail? Am I gonna be able to make enough money? And my husband and I, we realized, we were like, you know what, if it doesn't, or if I need extra, I can go like get a side job, or we can do, like, we'll figure out ways to make it work. We were lucky we never had to do that, but there's something, probably, if you feel very strongly and you're ready for it, then there's something that you can offer the world that the world needs. So just remind yourself of that and go for it.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kim. It was wonderful having you on.
Thank you, Michelle. This was really great. I love talking about business and entrepreneurship.
Well, yes, thank you so much. Well, we need to hear it. And it's exciting, it's scary, but you are definitely a huge inspiration. And thank you so much for all you do for empowering women. So if you haven't, go to sassmagazine.com. And that's where they'll find you. Where else can they find you?
They can also find us on Instagram. Our handle is Sass Magazine. You can find us on Facebook. We are Sass Frederick on Facebook. And then, yeah, sassmagazine.com is kind of where you can find a little bit of everything. Sign up for our e-newsletter to be the first to know about when we are able to start having events again, and for like our community and things like that. So
And is
yeah,
that
hit
how
us
they
up.
can get a hold of you if they wanted to use your creative services?
Yeah, you can find us if you are interested in using our creative services. We're at sasscreativestudios.com. But you can also find us through Sass Magazine as well. And
Awesome. Well,
we have special offers for especially like startup businesses and women-owned businesses. So we love working with brand new companies.
awesome. Well, thank you, Kim.
Thank you so much, Michelle.